Hi, welcome back to our series on how to minimize your application LLM costs. I'm Troy McGuinness, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest. And in this tip, what we're going to look at is how to stop paying the model to think when it doesn't need to. Let's get started. Now, all of the main frontier models now are thinking models. They have a reasoning process. Now, what that is before they give you a final response, they go through some introspection and a conversation with themselves to make sure that the output response is of high quality. And that may or may not be useful depending on how simple or complex the prompt is. Now, your job is to really, you can set the level low, medium, and high, or you can even turn it off altogether. And your job in minimizing the cost of these reasoning steps is to make sure you understand when it should be turned on and what level it should be turned on. Now, the savings here can be huge, 50 to 80%, because reasoning tokens are charged at the output cost, which is the higher of the two. So you really want to make sure you only use reasoning where it's necessary. And there are some good reasons not to, in addition to just saving cost. One thing, if it was like summarize this single line sentence, and now the user is watching this thinking ... block on the screen and instead of saying, well, what are you thinking about? Just summarize it already. For a simple task, it can be a very bad user experience. And the other side of it is anyone who's using the coding agents to code with, if you watch the thinking messages, sometimes it's just infuriating because you're thinking, that's not what I meant at all. That's like, how could you be so stupid? So disclosing the thinking messages for simple tasks can actually be a poor user experience because the user can see them as well if you surface them. And if you don't surface them, the user's sitting there waiting for the first response thinking, well, this is taking a while. That's the other downfall of turning reasoning and thinking on, is if you're just sort of waiting and showing the output, it can take a long time until the user sees something and they think that the system is hung or it's broken or it's not working. A poor user experience. So you really want to go as low as possible from a performance perspective, so that the users they don't get sat watching a thinking tag for something that's really simple and should only take a few seconds, and so they don't sort of judge your system on the vendor's sort of thinking process. So what options do you have? Well, first thing is, in development, you do not need to turn thinking on, reasoning on. Or again, during development, we're mainly looking at the output structure, not the quality of the result. We might turn it on occasionally to make sure that when we're testing the app and it works, but there's no reason to have it on in dev, and you'll save a lot of money because your developers can burn through a lot of tokens pretty quickly if they've got reasoning turned on to a high level needlessly. Secondly is you've got to consider the task and have a good reason to use it. Now, just like we had in, I think our lesson number 1 there was about choose the right model for the job. You've really also got to choose the right reasoning level for the job. And if it's going to use a complex model, it's probably likely that it's also going to need and could benefit from using reasoning, but you need to test your prompts to sort of see with reasoning low, medium, or high, whether you really do get a benefit given how long it's going to take to do and how much it's going to cost you on output tokens. And number 3 is you should always use the lowest level you can. And some of the vendors like OpenAI, they have an auto flag where they turn it up and down based on the prompt complexity. You'll need to test that to see if it works for you. Now, let me show you how I sort of manage this thinking step in code. Again, optional. You can roll your own of the same techniques here, but an open source project I have is promptopskit.com. And what it does is it helps you manage your prompts in one spot. Now, when you initialize it again, you get a prompts folder and you get all these sorts of, you can have subprompts and they inherit from the defaults MD or the defaults MD in their local folder. Now, the default I have is GPT 5.4 mini using a light, cheap model and low reasoning. Okay. Now, I do that, and that's the inherited one, so that will work in dev. Now, when I have a complex prompt task, what I do, as well as setting the model, is I sort of say in production, use a higher end model and turn reasoning up. In this case, this is a prompt I don't fully understand about molecular biology. It's probably going to do some research and could benefit from thinking about its answer before responding off the hip. It's going to give a slower response to the user, but a more accurate and viable response to the user. But because I'm inheriting from my default using low reasoning, I'm not going to pay for that cost on the high model and the high reasoning for output tokens during development time. So whatever you do, have a way of making sure that, when you're burning through tokens during dev time, you don't experience it. You might also have a tier there where your highest paying customers, your enterprise customers, get more thinking and a higher model than your free tier. Again, it's all about sort of minimizing the cost, but giving a good user experience. So again, my name's Troy McGuinness. This series is all about how to minimize your costs, and you really do need to start thinking about how to handle your thinking levels. Thanks.